You believe you're chasing money, but what you truly seek is what you imagine money will bring you. A sense of safety, honor, love, purpose. The world misled you. It convinced you that your worth is measured by what you collect. Yet a man surrounded by possessions can still feel hollow. You don't need wealth to live richly. You need awareness. In this time together, I will show you how to step out of the endless pursuit, not by throwing money away, but by waking up from your dependence on it. You will see why desire never fills you, why greed grows even as your numbers rise, and how to move from grasping for wealth to welcoming abundance with ease. You will discover that freedom, not fear, draws prosperity toward you. And you will realize that the richest soul is not the one with the most, but the one who needs so little. I understand the ache of those who chase forever, always just short of joy. You were taught that once you made enough money, you'd finally relax. But that moment never arrives. Even the one who holds 10 million whispers just a little more. The pursuit never stops because it was never truly about the money. It was about the emptiness inside you, the longing for meaning, the quiet fear that you are not enough. The marketplace feeds on that fear, offering visions it can never fulfill. You keep moving in circles, confusing constant effort with real progress. But what if I told you that you can step out of that loop right now? What if wealth was never something to chase, but something you simply forgot? In these moments we share, I will guide you past the illusion of money, past greed, past fear, past the restless pursuit that has driven humanity for ages. Together, we will look at why desire grows even after you reach every milestone you once thought would complete you. Why those with fortunes still feel empty inside, and how awareness can turn the simplest life into effortless abundance. I will show you how to loosen your grip on wealth, how to enjoy money without letting it claim you, and how to return to the natural rhythm where giving and receiving happen without strain. We will travel from the hunger of the mind to the calm of the heart, where money becomes a tool instead of an altar. Stay with me, because what you are about to discover is not theory, but liberation. A freedom that makes you wealthy, whether or not you hold a single coin. Most people overlook one vital truth. Money is not true power. It only seems powerful because you've forgotten the source of your real strength. Money is like the moon, shining with borrowed light. It only glows because your awareness reflects off it. When awareness fades, money appears brighter than it should. But when awareness returns, you see money clearly again. Nothing but paper, digits, and a symbol shaped by collective fear. It has no breath of its own, yet most of humanity kneels before it as if it was sacred. You bow to what you created, and you suffer because of that devotion. Look around. The whole world is chasing the same mirage. From those with nothing to those with everything, all are running after the same shadow. The poor man says, "If I just had enough, I'd be free." The rich man says, "If I just had a bit more, I'd be secure." The beggar and the billionaire stand on opposite ends of the same rope, tied to the same post of fear. One fears lacking, the other fears losing. In truth, both are impoverished in the same way. Their wealth or their poverty only mirrors their own insecurity. Money became your deity because fear became your foundation. From childhood, You were taught that your value comes from earning, not from existing. Trained to measure your worth by possessions instead of presence. The marketplace repeats this lie daily. You are unfinished until you buy, wear, or achieve something. It keeps you hungry, unsettled, and compliant. That machine relies on your blindness. It needs your pursuit because your pursuit powers it. But pause and ask yourself, what are you actually after? You think it's money, but it's really the feeling you expect money to deliver. Safety, dignity, peace, freedom. Yet the chase takes all of that away. You trade years of life for freedom and lose your time. You trade inner quiet for wealth and lose both. You end up locked in golden chains, costly, but still chains. I once told a story about a man who spent his whole life counting his gold. He watched over his coins every hour of his life, terrified that someone might take them. He never married, never paused to watch a dawn break, never listened to a child's laughter. And when his life ended, they found him collapsed over his pile of gold, fingers gripping a single coin, his face stiff with fear. He possessed everything the world praises, yet he never tasted a moment of true richness. Because richness isn't measured by what fills your hands, but by what fills your heart when your hands are empty. The mind clings to money like armor, hoping it can control a world that refuses to be controlled. That is why people chase it without end. Control is a poor replacement for awareness. You believe that if you can gather enough, life will finally bend to your will. But life does not obey force. It responds to your state of being. The more anxious you become about money, the more it slips away. The tighter you hold, the more it pushes back. It's like running after your shadow. The faster you move, the faster it escapes you. Stop running. Turn around. And you'll notice it was following you the whole time. When this truth sinks in, everything changes. You stop asking, how do I earn more? And start asking, what fear is making me chase? When fear fades, clarity appears. And with clarity, money returns to its rightful role, a helper, not a ruler. You begin to use money without letting it use you. You enjoy it without depending on it. You can carry it without clinging to it. That is where real wealth begins, not with accumulation, but with awareness. Once you recognize that money simply reflects your fear, the entire question transforms. It stops being about how to acquire more and becomes about why you still believe you are lacking. That quiet, honest question is the doorway to true abundance. What I am about to say may sound unusual because you've been taught from childhood that desire is natural, that ambition defines progress, that hunger is the engine of achievement. Yet that very hunger is the reason humanity stays agitated, anxious, and endlessly dissatisfied. The mind is never at rest because it thrives on what is missing. It cannot live in the present. It only survives by fantasizing about what might be. You could hand the mind the entire world, and within moments it would imagine another one, slightly bigger, slightly shinier, forever out of reach. This is why no one ever feels truly wealthy. The man with nothing longs for a car. The man with a car longs for a jet. The man with a jet longs for peace. And none of them have actually lived, because each one hungers for something no object can satisfy. Desire is a sickness disguised as ambition. It murmurs, just a bit more, one more victory, one more step, one more reward. And you agree, Because the mind has convinced you that stillness is dangerous. It cannot sit in silence, because silence would reveal its emptiness. So it pushes you to buy, to plan, to rush, to chase. Not because it knows the destination, but because it's terrified of stopping. And have you noticed? Even when you finally get what you wanted, the pleasure dissolves almost instantly. There's a flash of excitement, a brief high, and then the hunger returns. The same hunger, just dressed in new words, pointing to a new object, repeating the same cycle. The object shifts, but the emptiness remains. There was once a businessman who came to me utterly worn out. He said, "Master, I've built it all, a company, a house, a reputation, yet I can't sleep. Every night my mind feels like a storm I cannot quiet." I asked him, "Then what is it you seek now?" He answered, "Peace." I told him, "Then stop chasing achievements and sit in stillness." He gave a shaky laugh. "That's impossible. If I stop, everything will fall apart." And I replied, "No, my friend, if you never stop, it is you who will fall apart." Months later, he returned. His business was still intact, but his expression was entirely different. He had taught himself to sit alone for an hour each day. No phone, no plans, no goals. He said, "It's strange. I earn less now, yet I feel wealthier than I ever have." That is the paradox. The moment you stop sprinting after wealth, the feeling of abundance finally appears. The mind mistakes survival for meaning. It wants to matter. It wants proof that it exists. Money becomes its scoreboard, a way to measure its importance in the eyes of others. And that is why no amount ever satisfies it. Comparison has no finish line. Even a billionaire glances ahead and imagines someone richer. He doesn't see that he's comparing fantasies inside another fantasy. When you chase money, you are not pursuing life. You are pursuing a thought, and thoughts never stop multiplying. What follows is an endless race across mirages. You die thirsty in a desert you created yourself. Desire grows because absence breeds more absence. The more you feed it, the more ravenous it becomes. It is like pouring water into a bucket riddled with holes. You can fill it endlessly, and it will still remain empty. Each time you say, "I'll be happy when," you push happiness into the future. You place your joy on a horizon you can never reach. And then you spend your entire life walking toward a moment that never arrives. The future moves away at the same speed you chase it. But the instant you pause, something extraordinary happens. You see that the mirage was never real. It was simply your own thirst being projected outward. Why does the mind behave this way? Because it survives through desire. The mind is constructed out of movement. When desire stops, the mind begins to fade, and that fading feels like death to it. But what the mind calls death is actually freedom. When desire ends, you do not shrink, you expand. You become still, wide, quiet. You stop running through life trying to reach something. Instead, life begins to flow through you. You no longer chase, you allow. And this allowing is what I call awareness. Only awareness can silence the hunger, because awareness shows you that nothing was missing to begin with. When you sit in quiet and look within, you realize peace was always present. It was just buried beneath noise. You notice the joy you were pursuing was always resting inside you, untouched. When awareness arrives, the entire game changes. You stop living like a beggar waiting for life to hand you scraps. You begin living like a king who already has everything. You stop trading your spirit for objects, that lose their glow the moment you grip them. And then something remarkable occurs. Money loses its hypnotic spell. It becomes what it was always meant to be, a simple instrument, a kind of energy you can direct. You can shape with it, give through it, enjoy it, but you no longer lean on it for meaning. When you reach this inner space, desire may still arise, but it no longer pulls you by the throat. It becomes a visitor, not a ruler. You can nod at it, watch it pass, and remain centered in your quiet. So if the mind keeps producing hunger, what happens when you refuse to feed it? What happens when you stop sprinting? When you quit participating in the game, you suddenly see the race was never real, only motion inside your imagination. The moment you step out of the chase, the finish line vanishes, and so does your fatigue. What remains is simplicity, freedom, and a gentle joy no amount of wealth can purchase. What I'm about to say next goes against everything society teaches, because the world has been trained to believe life rewards strain, that success is carved from struggle, that victory belongs to those who run the fastest. But existence works in the opposite direction. Life moves towards stillness, not speed. True prosperity comes not to those who wrestle for it, but to those who are calm enough to receive it. Everything in nature drifts toward harmony. Trees rise without effort. Rivers discover their paths without maps. Even the stars travel through the night in silence. Only human beings strain and fight. Only humans believe tension is the source of abundance, and that belief marks the beginning of suffering. Here is something the mind refuses to grasp. The harder you try to force life, the more life pushes back. The more desperately you want something, the further it slips from reach. Because desire carries the vibration of lack. It whispers to existence, "I don't have." And existence, being a mirror, answers with the same message. When you are restless, when you are constantly pushing, you create a field of resistance around you, like ripples stirred in troubled water. Nothing can approach you. But when you are inwardly still, deeply still, everything begins moving toward you. This is not a metaphor, it is a law. The flower doesn't chase the bee. It simply opens, and the bee arrives. The tree doesn't race after sunlight. It stands steady, rooted, patient, and the light finds it. Life is drawn to stillness because stillness is trust. Real abundance requires trust, not tension. The universe has never failed to provide for life. Yet you were raised to fear not having enough. The more you fear, the more you cling. And the more you cling, the poorer you feel. Look at the man who works endlessly, running after money like someone possessed. His body tightens. His rest disappears. His laughter fades. Even when his hands are overflowing, his heart stays hollow. He calls this progress. I call it bondage. Because what is the use of gaining the whole world if you lose the peace required to enjoy any of it? The harder you press life, the quicker it escapes you. Like trying to grab water so tightly, it seeps through your fingers. There was once a fisherman who lived beside a wide, generous river. Each morning he cast his net, but impatience ruled him. He pulled it in too early, worried the fish might slip away. He rarely caught anything and cursed the river for being unkind. One day, an old man watching him said, "The river has been giving all along, but you never waited long enough to receive its gift." That night, the fisherman tried a new way. He cast his net and then sat quietly beneath the moon. listening to the current, breathing with it, waiting without demand. At dawn, when he pulled the net, it was heavy with fish. This is how life behaves. It is always ready to offer, but only to the one patient enough to trust its timing. But you may ask, how do I stay still in a world that glorifies constant striving? How do I trust when everyone else is racing? The answer is simple, though not always easy. You must choose to be different. You must have the courage to slow down while the world speeds up. Remember, awareness does not grow in crowds. It blossoms in solitude. When you stop running, when you stop comparing, when you step out of the competition, something remarkable unfolds. You begin to see that life has been moving toward you all along. Money, opportunities, connections, ideas. They start arriving naturally. Not because you pushed, but because your energy no longer repels them. This is what I call the law of non-chasing. What you chase always slips away. What you are is what you naturally draw in. The energy of abundance is like the wind. It drifts toward places that are open. When you're tense, afraid, or fixated, you shut yourself tight. But when you're relaxed, joyful, and present, you open wide and life can flow in. Money is not a harsh ruler. It is a loyal servant. It simply reflects the state of your inner world. When you cling and grasp, it escapes you. When you trust and stay open, it arrives as easily as breathing. So stop pursuing money and start embodying abundance itself. Be so full inside that there's no space left for lack. Be so content that money becomes curious about your calm. That is when the chase ends, because the one who was chasing disappears. Inside you lives a quietness with magnetic strength. The more you rest in it, the more life begins arranging itself around you without effort. You notice coincidences. You meet the right person at precisely the right moment. Opportunities show up as if called by name. The path reveals itself without your planning. This is not luck. It is resonance. When you are peaceful, you vibrate in harmony with existence, and life begins to respond. In that alignment, money stops feeling like something you must earn. It feels like something that shows up while you're simply living. So stop wrestling with life. Stop shouting your desires as though the universe cannot hear. Instead, speak softly through silence. Trust that what is meant for you will never pass you by. Sit beneath the shade of your inner tree and let the wind deliver what you need. You will see. When you let go of striving, the river of abundance starts to flow. And you'll wonder why you ever ran so desperately in the first place. What I'm about to tell you may shake the foundation of everything you've believed about wealth. You were taught that to live richly, you must accumulate. That a person's success is measured in money, titles, and possessions. But I say, the wealthiest human is the one who learns how little he truly needs. The more you depend on, the poorer you feel. The less you require, the freer you become. Look closely and you'll notice. Those whose homes overflow with things often carry emptier hearts than the one who possesses nothing but a song inside his chest. Possessions can decorate the world around you, but they cannot nourish who you are inside. They can stuff your shelves, but they cannot fill your silence. They can wrap you in sparkle, but they cannot ignite your soul. I have watched kings live like beggars and beggars carry themselves like kings. The difference is never in what they owned, but in what lived within them. There was once a king who ruled a vast kingdom. Yet sleep never visited him. His palace shone with gold, but his nights were restless and heavy. One evening from his balcony, he noticed a beggar sleeping peacefully beneath a tree. The man had no home, no belongings, no guards to protect him. Yet he held something the king had never tasted: peace. The next morning, the king summoned the beggar and asked, "What secret lets you sleep so deeply?" The beggar smiled and answered, "Your Majesty, my treasure is light. I do not defend it. I simply live it." That night, the king placed his crown aside and lay on the ground beside the beggar. For the first time in years, he slept like a child. When you stop carrying the burden of possessions, you rediscover the sweetness of simplicity. Simplicity is not poverty, it is clarity. Poverty is having nothing and still hungering. Simplicity is having plenty and craving nothing. A simple life is not punishment, it is freedom from the chaos of excess. The moment you simplify, you begin to truly see, and what you see is astonishing. That the sky, the trees, the morning breeze, the laughter of a child are treasures no amount of money can buy. The richest person alive is poor if he cannot delight in the ordinary. The poorest person is rich if he finds wonder in small things. But the modern world has buried this truth. It glorifies stacking possessions, celebrates constant consumption, and worships the noise of accomplishment. You are told to endlessly upgrade your car, your phone, your lifestyle. You think you are climbing, but the mountain has no summit. Each step only deepens your thirst. The more you pack your life with objects, the more you fear what might be missing. And slowly, you confuse clutter with comfort, indulgence with happiness, extravagance with love. You spend years constructing a cage from your own desires. A golden cage maybe, but still a cage. Real richness appears the moment you see that you already have enough to live fully. When gratitude becomes natural to you, abundance naturally follows. The person who can close their eyes and feel grateful for their breath, their meal, their loved ones, that person has discovered the treasure the rest of the world is still searching for. Gratitude unlocks wealth because it erases the illusion of lack. You begin to recognize that life has always been generous. It was only your blindness that made it seem scarce. There is a story of a man wandering through the desert. His hands gripped a bag of diamonds, but his lips were cracked with thirst. He refused to drop the bag, though each step drained his strength. Eventually, he collapsed, his diamonds scattering across the sand, shining mockingly in the sun. He had riches, but not wisdom. Possessions, but no peace. He is the picture of modern humanity, dying of thirst while clutching what cannot quench it. What he needed was not more water, but awareness to see that the oasis was already within him. When you begin living as if nothing is missing, you find abundance everywhere, even in difficulty. You start to understand that the value of life is not in its length or its luxury, but in its depth. You begin to savor the richness of a quiet morning, the luxury of solitude, the wealth that rises from simple contentment. You realize that joy is found not in what you possess, but in who you are, in the gentle awareness of simply existing. Money can buy ease, yes, but never peace. It can decorate your home, but it cannot light your inner world. Only awareness can do that. Awareness turns an ordinary day into a celebration. When you are truly present, even the smallest action becomes sacred. Eating, walking, breathing. And in that presence, money loses its power over your mind. It becomes a tool again. Helpful, certainly, but no longer the source of your joy. You start spending without fear because fear no longer steers your choices. You begin giving generously because the idea of lack no longer lives inside you. Live richly, but let your richness be unseen. Let it show in your ease, your quiet, your freedom. Let people look at you and wonder, what does he have that I don't? And let your answer be silence. For real wealth cannot be spoken. It can only be lived. When you live as though nothing is missing, abundance reveals itself everywhere, in a breath, in a pause, in the space between words. That is where the real treasure rests, not in your bank, but in your being. Now we reach the heart of the journey, the place where the seeker finally stops seeking, where the mind loosens its final grip, and the soul opens like clear sky after a storm. This is what I call ultimate freedom, the freedom that appears when you no longer rely on money, success, or approval to feel alive. You spent years believing freedom comes after something, after safety, after wealth, after recognition. But freedom does not wait at the end of the achievement. It waits behind your attachments. When you stop relying on money to bring you peace, you discover peace was here all along. It was never gone, only covered by the fear of losing what was never truly yours. Money can serve love, but it can never take its place. You can use it to heal, to feed, to uplift, and then it becomes sacred, a tool of compassion. But when you use it to patch the emptiness within, it becomes poison. Money only amplifies what you already are. If you are asleep, it amplifies your greed. If you are awake, it amplifies your grace. The issue was never money. The issue was forgetting. You began to believe that something outside you could repair something inside you. But how can an object heal an emotion? How can a number on a screen touch the depth of your being? The man who fears poverty is not poor because he lacks wealth. He is poor because he lacks trust. The wealthy man who clings to what he owns is not rich. He is poor because he cannot release it. True abundance belongs to the one who gives freely without fear. When you are no longer terrified of losing, life has nothing it can take from you. When you stop gripping so tightly, everything begins to move toward you because nothing in you is pushing it away. That is the paradox. The less you need, the more life offers. There was a man who once came to me holding a small sack filled with jewels. He said, "Master, I am terrified of losing these. They are everything I've earned, my only safety." I asked him to set the bag beside him and close his eyes. He obeyed. For a few moments he sat quietly. Then I told him, "Now, imagine the jewels are gone. Feel that loss completely." His breathing grew shallow, his shoulders tightened. After a pause, I said, "Now imagine you are gone. No body, no breath, no thought." A strange peace washed over him. When he opened his eyes, his face looked softer. He said, "When I pictured my own death, the fear of losing the jewels vanished." I smiled and said, "Of course, when you see that nothing truly belongs to you, not even yourself, there is nothing left to fear." He began to laugh, freely, for the first time in his life. That laughter was his release. This is what it means to let money move like water. It must flow through you, not sit stagnant within you. The ocean does not cling to a single wave. It allows each one to rise and fall, yet it is never drained. That is abundance. The miser is like a pond, still shrinking, afraid to let the water move. The awakened person is like the sea, always giving, always receiving, never frightened because they know they cannot be emptied. What moves stays alive. What clings begins to die. And when you truly understand this, something remarkable happens. You start to play with life instead of struggling against it. You begin using money with creativity, not compulsion. You might still have a home, a business, even great wealth, but these become expressions of your being, not replacements for it. They no longer shape your identity. You can step away from everything and still feel whole. You can sleep beneath a roof or beneath the stars and still feel at home. You can hold wealth in your hands, yet keep your heart unbound. This is the real art of living, to move through the world without letting the world trap you. I have lived among riches and I have lived with nothing at all. In both conditions, I remain the same. Silk robes or bare skin. Neither changed the truth of who I am, because what I am cannot be touched by what I possess. This is the gift of awakening. When you realize that joy does not depend on situations, that peace does not depend on ownership, that love does not depend on another person's presence, you become untouchable in the most beautiful way. Not because you build walls, but because you expand beyond the reach of fear. When this understanding settles into your heart, the chase stops. The world can no longer lure you with promises of more, because you have tasted what enough truly feels like, and enough has no limits. The joy of enough is the greatest luxury you will ever experience. From that stillness, generosity flows on its own. You no longer give out of duty. You give because you are overflowing. Life moves through you so fully that your hands release without effort, too filled with being to grasp anything else. The search has turned inside out. You are no longer pursuing wealth. You have become wealth itself. The river no longer races toward the sea, for it realizes it was never separate in the first place. What can the world offer someone who already carries everything within? What can money provide to the one who has tasted eternity in a single breath? This is the highest freedom, to walk through the world untouched by its temptations, to possess all things yet desire none of them, to live completely yet cling to nothing at all. And once you experience this freedom, you will never again be deceived by the shine of gold. You will recognize that the real treasure has always lived in your own quiet, patiently waiting for the moment you stopped chasing and finally began to be.